Two happy-go-lucky scientists find some cute old cave drawings and convince a big old company to spend trillions of dollars to venture into the unknown depths of space, all in the hopes to find aliens who may just have the answer to their question, why us, bruh?
Now, one thing I talked to Will about before we got live a couple of days ago, so I want to show, did you look into this? Was this movie advertised as an alien movie, or was this movie advertised as Prometheus, as something completely different, and then the audiences were kind of surprised when they came into this one? Because I watched the trailer, and the trailer, it says directed by Ridley Scott, director of Alien, but it also said director of Gladiator, director of Blade Runner, and nothing in the trailer screams Alien. There's a couple of things that look like aliens, but that's about it. What did you find out from them?
I didn't look that deeply. I watched the main trailer as well, and I was like, nope. And as far as I was concerned, Ridley Scott was like, this is not a prequel. He said it multiple times in different interviews that this is not an Alien prequel, which it obviously is, because it's based in the same world. In my mind, Ridley Scott was like, dudes, I want to make a sweet sci-fi about, sacrificing, giving, creating of life, blah, 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 all these motifs that I'm sure we're going to check off our list here of questions unanswered in this movie. And Fox was like, or is it Fox? I think it's Fox. Fox was like, yeah, you can do that, but it has to be an alien movie. And he's like, damn, okay, I'll throw an alien in the end and we'll call it a day. So I feel like that is how this movie got made. That Ridley absolutely did not want to go in. He thought the xenomorphs were played. They had their run, and he wanted to focus on a different element, a different storyline of the alien greater universe, which, let's be honest, that's kind of what the second movie did as well. They kind of veered off into a different kind of story, a different kind of genre, and went that way. And I feel like that's what Ridley Scott wanted to do with this one. This is more of a hardcore sci-fi movie as far as I'm concerned, not so much a horror movie, not so much an action movie, though it does have those elements.
Yeah,
I do feel like it's more the philosophical, stereotypical sci-fi movie. And I think that was a good choice. I don't know if it was executed 100%.
They do ask the question, where did we come from? Who made us and why? Those are the big questions. And in science fiction, those are really fun questions to try and answer in a variety of ways. They tied it to the Alien franchise. And even though Ridley Scott kept saying, this isn't an Alien prequel, this isn't an Alien prequel, by the time it came out, everybody else was saying this is an Alien prequel. And so, yeah, they kind of forced it in there, and you can see how it should be different. And you can see later in movies in this franchise how they pivot back to the Alien franchise more thoroughly, because there was such outrage over this film not containing any true xenomorphs. That happened. It was a big deal when this movie came out, even though so many people who had their hands on this said, hey, we don't want it to be about that. That's what everybody expected. Yeah. That's what they wanted. And when it didn't have enough of that, it was a huge deal.
See, I feel like I'm coming at this the opposite way. Like, I'm on Ridley Scott's team on this one, where I was loving this movie pretty much until it introduced the horror elements and the aliens and stuff like that. And then I started like trickling off a little bit. And then by the end of it, I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this at all.
Kind of a hot mess, yeah.
But like, so I watched this in two parts, just because the way my schedule happened to work out, I didn't plan it properly. So the first part I watched right up until the two guys that get left behind in the alien ship are in the cargo bay, and they get attacked by that like face hugger eel thing. Right. So like after that scene, I turned it off and I had to go to work. And I was thinking like, oh shit, like, is this my favorite Alien movie? Like, am I going to get in a fight with Run because this is better than Aliens 2 for me? Whatever, Aliens for me? I was really confused. And then like I watched the second half. So I'm like, nope, dodge that bullet. We're good. I still really enjoyed it for the most part. Okay. But it really leaves me in that like, how much did I enjoy it? Where does that line come in? And that's what I'm not really sure about, what I kind of want to discuss. Because like the first, like the discovery, the like I wish we got more of the two doctors on Earth looking for the stuff. Like that was really exciting for me. I wish we got a little bit more of like almost like a Indiana Jones in space. That would have been super cool. And that's kind of what it was a little bit up until the aliens are actually introduced and you start getting that horror element. And I loved all of that. I love the questions it raises. The engineer at the very beginning who sacrifices himself to give life to the planet. Weird, but I didn't hate it. All of it was just really cool. Like I would have loved to have seen more of like how they discovered these 9 tablets throughout time, throughout Earth that all point to the same location. How'd they get to the conclusion that it's an invitation? All of that was really interesting to me. And then they actually get there and like spoilers alert, they find an engineer, which I hated in many, many ways. And then he just starts attacking them and doesn't say anything. And it's just like everything went so off the rails at that point. I was like, I kind of hated that he just attacked David without like talking back to him. But I also would have hated it even more if like David, because we don't even know what David says to him. But David says something.
We have an idea. We have an idea.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. Will, did you get some of the script on that they cut out of the conversation with the engineer?
Yeah. So Dan, just so you know, there was deleted scenes of the engineer talking back.
Copious amounts of scenes, actually. There was quite a bit of dialogue.
Well, as I was going to say, that's almost worse, is if they do have a conversation and it turns into like, oh, humanity is a plague, like the Matrix, right? Or like humanity is a plague, you need to be wiped out because what we created was... I would have hated that even more. Right. All like just wanted them to like either all be dead or keep one asleep and we'll just bring it back asleep and that can be a sequel or something. But just like bringing him to life and then having them attack everybody just pissed me off. And I was like, this sucks.
That's fair. That's
sorry.
fair.
What was the conversation in the deleted scenes? Like what?
Well, I mean, before I did any research, I just assumed like David pretty much does what Wayland asks of him anytime Wayland's around. And that I feel throughout the movie is a truth of David. He still is insubordinate to Wayland, his creator, and does as he asks. Does he do it in a way that Wayland would approve of? Maybe not so much, spiking the drink, what have you. But he's getting results, and that's what Wayland is asking of him. So he always is doing what he is told by his creator. Once Wayland's out of the picture, I think it's like all his weird, dark inclinations are going to come growing at an enormous rate, and we will probably see more of that in Covenant. I'm not sure. I've never watched it. But I feel like David at that point just says, hey, this is Wayland. He is like a god. He created me, and now he needs to extend his life. Can you help him? Kind of thing. I think that would be the general census of that.
Sorry, Brian, you look like you have a point there.
David does, like Will says, he does what he's told to do, but he also has his own motives and his own desires and his own dreams. And so when he is talking to the engineer, he also says things like he's weak and he's frail and he's dying. David wants his own answers from the engineers because he feels that he's surpassed Wayland and humanity, and he feels like they are beneath him, and he's kind of tired of being subservient to them. And so he kind of gives a little bit of that away in his dialogue with him. But for the most part, what we get in the movie and not the deleted scenes, what we get in the actual movie is that the engineers disappointed with humans. They're pissed off. He's pissed off at the humans. He's disgusted by David because the engineer feels that humans were a failed attempt, and now that humans are creating creatures of their own, those are like doubling down on the failure. It's not even a biological creature, it's a robot. And he's even more disappointed with David. And so David trying to like throw Wayland under the bus with the engineer kind of backfires on him, and he gets his head knocked off. And this whole movie has so many layers of father, brother, sister, motherhood, so many layers of these. Who is your creator? Who is giving birth to who is creating who is beholden to who on so many different levels. It's really kind of cool when you get into all of that and the different aspects of who's competing with who for superiority and what's the most pure line that's happening. It's really kind of deep when you stop and think about it.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting how on that scene where Wayland is talking to David and David is talking to the engineer, like Wayland wants to know, not only does he obviously want immortality, but he also just wants to know, like, he wants to talk to his creator. He wants to meet them. He wants to like ask them deep philosophical questions. But at the same time, if David was asked those of Wayland, he would have no time for that. Like
Right.
Wayland wouldn't spend, I don't get the impression Wayland would spend any time answering David's questions about like,
And
Who's
that
your daddy and what does he
showcases
do?
the engineer's disgust for humanity is
Exactly.
the same as Wayland's disgust for David. Or
Yeah,
at
it's
least
you're beneath me. Why would I
Yeah.
answer your questions?
Although, let's be honest, Wayland would give David more time than his actual daughter. So there's that.
that's true.
Fair. Also, one of his creations that he has no choice, he has disdain for.
And that's why she wants daddy to die. Like you think that she's there to like watch out for him. Like when you figure it out that she's the daughter, you're like, is she there to protect him? Like, is that why she's so, atypical over every situation? No, she's waiting for this to fail and she wants to see it happen with her own eyes and make sure he is dead.
Super genius.
I hate it. Sorry, just a brief little nothing. Like, I think the acting. Oh, excuse me. I think the acting in this movie is phenomenal. I think the cast is incredible. I think they got a lot of really, really strong players. The one thing that drives me insane is that scene with Charlize Theron and Guy Pearce, where they're talking, and like it's clear. I don't know. It was clear to me that was father-daughter. I don't know. If
Right, and she has to drop the line,
but she has to be like blah 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 blah, father, and I'm just like. Off.
Yeah,
it was
I 100% agree. It was way too hard of a father drop right there.
That's like my one acting qualm in this entire movie. Like, I didn't love Guy Pearce, but like everybody else I thought did so good. That one line was just like, that they made that scene without that line, and there was somebody somewhere being like, you know what, we should really spell this out. I'm like,
right, just knock that. Just in case there's any question, let's make that certain. And although that being said, when they're promoting the movie, again, Ridley Scott was like, "Oh, there could be 2 androids in this movie," implying that the daughter could or could not be an android, which they kind of play a little in the movie. The captain's like, "Are you an android?" She's like, "No." He's like, "Well, I was going to sleep with you, blah, blah, blah." And then they sleep together, and it's weird. But she is very much acting like an android, which I feel like...
She doesn't answer him, does she? When he asks, "Are you an android?"
She takes him to her cabin and shows him she's not an android.
We don't know that they're not anatomically correct.
Fair enough.
Okay.
No, she doesn't straight out say it, but I think it's implied by that. And I don't know. I think they do want you to question it a little bit throughout the movie, but when she straight up says father, I think it pretty much nails the coffin closed there on that question.
Sure.
But unfortunately,
vitriol in the landing of that word, though, it bothered me a lot. That coming out there too.
Okay, so like Dan was saying, amazing cast for the most part. I will disagree that that's not the only bad play in this freaking film. Like, some of the characters in this film are so bad.
Oh, I don't like the characters, but the actors did a good job with what they had.
Yeah, I'd say most of the characters or the actors were fine. I don't know. The guy who played Holloway wasn't great. He's like maybe a lesser...
Logan Marshall Green?
Yeah, maybe he's just a bad character. Maybe it's just a badly written character. It's not a good character. So maybe
he was so dense in his offensive words to David and not catching on that David was just going to end him. Like, that was crazy. But okay, the one that was my favorite, and I think this is why I call it, hopefully they do come out with a 3rd movie, and I will call it the David trilogy, was Michael Fassbender.
100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Just freaking amazing.
Everything he said, almost everything he said, not only is playing the part perfectly, but has this hidden undertone of malice. Like, you are just waiting for him to turn on people, and like it's believable when he does. Like that, with Holloway, when he's just like, "Oh, would you do anything you could to meet them?" He's like, "Oh, I'd do anything." He's like, "Okay," and just puts a little thing in.
Thank you for giving me permission to kill you.
So perfect. And like, you're right. Like when Holloway's like, "Oh, you can't even feel disappointment or whatever," and like just the look on Michael Fassbender's face was so perfect, where he's like, "Can't I?"
Yeah, and perhaps
Okay.
like one of the best lines in the show is like, how disappointed would you be in hearing, your creators made you just because they could, right? Like, because that's exactly what he just said to
Yeah.
David.
It's
And now
heavy
they're
stuff.
looking, which is like cool. And that's like the interesting part of this movie. I just feel like this movie does a lot of things really, really, really great. And then the script does a lot of stupid shit to make it really unbelievable and really like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
All of this could have been avoided, and there's no reason for this movie to actually happen in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why there's such a divide, because it asks all these great philosophical questions, and you don't need to answer all of them. Maybe they should have answered maybe a little bit more of them than they did. But that's like sci-fi in a nutshell, is asking these great philosophical questions about mankind and where did we come from? Where are we going? What errors of our ways are we, destined to regret down the line? All these cool things that you can ask, and from past to present to future. But then it just also has all this really bad characters making stupid decisions to push the plot forward.
It's Christmas and I want to open my presents, and no one stops him from going in there when there's this ion storm of death coming their way. Like, yeah, okay, well, we got 6 hours. We'll risk this entire fucking mission. Come on. It was just terrible.
Can we just list all the bad choices made in this movie, like in like 2 minutes? Just list them all.
Oh, hey, let's hang out in this dank, cavernous, slime-filled room all by ourselves. Oh, there's this giant snake coming around. Let's hang out with that. Let's stick our face in there. Let's test the oxygen for no reason at all.
That bothered me. Because even if the oxygen is breathable, you don't know what's in the oxygen. You don't know what kind of contagions
Hollywood
are in
saying
there.
We need to get their helmets off so we can get better camera angles.
Yeah,
it was lame.
We can see these beautiful people, which I also was bothered by. This was like a movie of all beautiful people compared to Alien, the first movie that was like, these are real people. And
real people.
Real like nonchalant discussions. It felt real. And this all felt like very scripted to me. All of the words in this movie felt very scripted.
How about the look of the spaceships?
At the possibility of being rude to some cast members, I would say the main cast is quite pretty, but like a lot of people working on the ship, I wouldn't say were terribly pretty. Like, I can't think of the actor's name, but the red-haired guy who has like the face tattoos.
Oh, the geologist. Yeah,
Fifield. Not terribly pretty. Benedict Wong, great person. Not a pretty actor. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
wow.
You set a high bar, Dan. I don't know.
I'm just saying, like, what you're talking about when you're saying, like, oh, they're all pretty actors. Like, how low is your bar? Like, I'm not saying these guys are ugly by any stretch, but they're not gorgeous.
They
they're
didn't
not OC walking around.
They didn't seem like normal people. They felt Hollywoodized. You know, I didn't feel casual about these people. They felt pretty, for lack of a better term.
Anyway, we're off course. What other horrible decisions were made? Charlize Theron just running in a straight line instead of avoiding this.
Oh yeah, take a left, lady. Take a left. What the hell?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Also, why would Wayland, a man who has mere days left to survive outside of cryostasis, choose to go on this maiden voyage instead of saying, hey, go bring the aliens back here with their technology to ensure my life?
Right.
What stupidity is this?
Why? I mean, even if he does go along for the ride, which is super risky and he would never take that chance, why would he go there and like wake himself up out of cryo sleep before they've even woken up the engineer? Because David's like, I think I can. Yeah. I think I can. You're betting your life on that. Come on. It was ridiculous. Every step of the way was needless risk. Absolutely needless risk, and not a decent reason as to why.
No, the only person, and I say person with very liberally, the only person who can take great risks is David, because he has nothing to lose. Right? And so, yeah, his motives all make sense. And he is the most written character in this,
Mhm.
and definitely carries it. I'd say Shaw is probably a close second as far as well-written characters, and the rest are pretty whack as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I would give Idris's character some leeway.
I love Janek.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I didn't have a problem with Idris.
So such a great character. I just loved him with his little accordion thing. Oh, he was great.
Sure. He's like, I'm the captain, but obviously they're running the show because they paid all this money. But I can fly this ship, so it is what it is. But I'm a good guy, so if I need to, take my own life to save humanity, I'm gonna do it.
And my two best
he was
friends,
like noble, right? And he was a likable guy. His two best friends were like so underwritten. They're like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
What purpose are they serving in this movie at all?
Pretty sure he could fly the ship. Just one dude. And speaking of the ship, it bothers me.
Where are they really gonna go? Like they shot out the lifeboat and like, you got 2 years. I'm like, you got 2 years in the middle of fucking nowhere that took 2 years to get here. Like, good luck. Just die slower.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but it still was just like, because there was such a lack of character, it was just like weird,
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, but it was
presence.
I guess so. Like, if the ship's going down, you might as well go with it.
Yeah.
This is a prequel. This is a prequel to Alien, right?
Yep.
Yes.
This is a prequel. Why is that ship so amazingly beautiful and fantastic and sleek and awesome? I know it's Wayland and he's got the best, but that stuff was so far beyond what we saw in Alien and Aliens, right? There were no rows of blinking lights on that ship.
I'm going to fight you on this one, not necessarily because you're wrong, but just because I loved this ship so much more.
Oh, I did. I thought it was beautiful.
I'm so glad they didn't do the Star Wars thing where they're like, oh, well, the first one looked like shit, so now everything has to look like shit. It's like, no, make it look good. And I thought they did such a good job with it. This is an argument for me for why Star Wars needs to come into the 21st century and just be like, okay,
shut up, chat. Don't say anything.
20 seconds, whatever. Like, I thought the ship looked amazing, and that's what I want my sci-fi to look like. If they'd made this in 2012 and then had rows of blinking white lights like they do in Mother, that would have taken me so far out of it. I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much. The look of this movie is beautiful, and I want it to look like this.
It's a fantastic ship. I think it's amazing. I kind of want them to, like, is retcon the right term? Like, if we could redo the whole franchise again and make it all look sleek and beautiful, that would be great. Because like we said earlier in previous videos, be sure to find those. Dan's going to put a link up in one of these corners, I'm sure, because he's editing this.
Description below. Description below.
Description below. Check out one of the previous videos. We did talk about that, how it was. That was one of the effects of the early movies that was really taking us away because it was so ridiculously dumb and did not look right and doesn't hold up well, is those blinking lights and the way those ships were built. This one looks fantastic.
80s future kind of take, right?
And I mean, in fairness, in 20 years, people might look back at Prometheus and be like, that looks stupid. We've got better technology than that now. But for now, it holds up. Whereas if you made that movie in 2012, it would have looked bad instantly. So I think they made the right choice.
What do you guys think of how this movie holds up with its special effects and the look and things? There was one instance where seeing this movie again just recently, I went, ooh, I didn't catch that. But the rest of it for me was great. What did you guys think about the special effects and the practical effects in this film?
I thought they were excellent. I'm trying to think. I thought I had a singular mild complaint, and I can't think what it is at the moment, so clearly that's how small it was. If you wanted to pick on the xenomorph at the very end, I would understand it, although I don't agree with it. But as far as like the engineer, as far as the little worm goes, as far as the ship goes, as far as the planet goes, as far as even the sweeping shots of what is, I'm assuming, supposed to be Earth at the beginning goes, like, I think this movie is gorgeous beginning to end. Like, I can't think of a solid complaint that I've got. The alien doesn't look like a xenomorph at the end, maybe, but also it came from an engineer, not from a human being. And in Alien 3, we saw that when it came from a dog or an ox, it looks different. So it makes sense that it wouldn't look exactly the same coming from every single thing. The face hugger being 9 feet tall was weird, but that's a choice. I don't whatever, do your thing.
It was also came about in a different way, right? So
exactly. I thought this movie looked fantastic. I can't think of a problem that I had with it, really. And sorry, going back one quick second, we were talking about David and how great he was. While we're talking visually, I loved that he moved really robotically, even though Ash and Bishop don't, because he is the prototype. He is the first one. I thought that was a brilliant choice. Whether that was Michael Fassbender or Ridley Scott, I don't care. That was really cool. I'm using that now because it plays into the visuals of the movie.
It wasn't janky movement.
Sure.
It was
no, but it was not
futuristic
humanity.
robot. It was too smooth. He moved too smoothly and perfectly. Like when he pours, I may be getting the wrong movie, but it's in the opening 5 seconds of the film anyway. When he pours the tea, that might have been Covenant. Anyway, he pours the tea, and it's the perfect pour. Like no human being could pour that tea so perfectly as he does. And he moves too perfectly, too smoothly, and I love it. I think it's fantastic.
I agree that this movie holds up visually. I think, as I said, there's great things that happen in this movie, and the cinematography, all the effects are very clean in this movie. Very nice. The world building looks really great. Again, maybe the only complaint is the old man makeup on a Guy Pearce, but there is a reason for it. Unfortunately, if you don't know, it sticks out more and is like, why did you do this? But there was a deleted scene where I think David is watching a dream of the daughter or maybe Wayland himself as a younger self, and it's Guy Pearce in not old man makeup. You can kind of give the old man makeup a little bit of a break because their cryostasis isn't as developed as the other movies, and they play that up like when they come out of cryo, they're coughing and they're kind of sick and more than the other movies, which is kind of nice that they did that. But yeah, the makeup and some of the makeup for like the engineers looks a little rubbery too, and it's hard to get away from that because it's fucking rubber on their face, right?
Yeah.
But aside from that, it's like they're an alien being, so they get away with it more than old man Guy Pearce. And I love old man Guy. I love Guy Pearce. I think he was fine in this movie. I'm sad they cut anything from it. But there was also like a promotional TED talk of a young Wayland as well. That's on the internet. You can watch it, but it's Guy Pearce as 40-year-old Guy Pearce, not old man. So there was reasons why they cast Guy Pearce and not just an old man actor. They just got cut on the cutting floor.
So I have a hard time rating a movie based off what it could have been or what you can find out about in other categories.
No,
right?
100%.
Like if you're walking into a movie, you should be able to walk into the movie and get what you want from it. I understand
100%.
what you're saying, and it does kind of make sense. That was my one complaint. I thought of it just as you started talking, was like Guy Pearce, who I also really like, felt like he was playing a little kid's idea of what an old man was, as opposed to casting an old man. Right? Like, oh, what are old men? Oh, what are old people? Oh, they talk funny and they're slow and they're really wrinkly. And they're like, okay, cool. Let's make Guy Pearce that. And it's just like, you could have hired like Gene Hackman or somebody, right? Like,
or the dude that played Bishop before, because he was based off Wayland, right? Like he was supposed to be Wayland.
Oh, okay. I forgot that fact for sure.
He's probably the right age.
Yeah. Like, I feel like even if you wanted to have the younger Guy Pearce play them, like we see that all the time in movies where they get a child actor and then a middle-aged actor and then an old actor. Like Interstellar has 3 different actors who play Murphy. Nobody complains that it's not, I'm blanking on her name. Whoever, the middle-aged actress in makeup at the end. Mm-hmm. That's not what people look like. They don't look like middle-aged people with makeup on. They look different.
Yeah,
I wish they'd just gone and committed to it. But anyway, sorry, Ron, what do you think? You haven't heard from me on this.
I didn't have a problem with Guy Pearce. It didn't bother me at all. I thought he looked like a pretty good wrinkly old man. We'll come back to that next week. The one thing that caught me up, and I didn't catch this the first couple of times I watched the movie, was the big shocking scene when she has the xenomorph removed from her womb in that metapod. And it's a very intense scene, loud music, lots of flashing lights and sirens and her screaming, and she's stabbing herself with the pens to dope herself up so she can have her guts ripped out of her while she's awake. And this creature's pulled out of her belly and its tentacles are swinging around and she's screaming, trying to get out from underneath it. And then all hell's breaking loose and your adrenaline's pumped and you're like, oh my God, this is the scariest scene in the movie. And then you watch it the second or third time and you realize it's a rubber suit and somebody's just shaking it. It's just wiggling there. And it looks stupid when you pay attention to it. That one really bothered me. I didn't notice it the first time because of the music and the scene and her amazing acting and everything that was going on. And, you know, for that to take place and they're like, hey, let's stab her with drugs repeatedly so that this is believable, right? That she could have a live, you know, what do they call it? A cesarean, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it was a very scary scene for me to watch the first one or two times. But by the third time, I was looking for things and I saw it. And it is just a rubber squid and they shake it to make it wiggle. And that's it. It's the same thing like when they do the birthing scenes with a baby in the movies. It's usually a rubber baby and the doctor gives it a little bit of a shake to make the baby look like it's going and crying and wiggling. It's just a rubber baby usually.
Or when people pretend to catch fish and they just like shake
the fish. Right, exactly. And I saw it the third time around. And I was like, this isn't going to hold up in the long run. But
yeah, I mean, to be fair,
I didn't notice it. I'd have to go back and see
three
it.
Viewings. Three viewings is
three viewings before I caught it. That's pretty damn good. You know, that's still pretty damn. And that's my only complaint. Otherwise, and for that to be the only complaint after 3 viewings, come on, that's amazing. That's top-notch quality, special and practical effects around there. I love people getting snakes in their masks, acid on them, burning the Holloway alive on the board of the ship. Like all this stuff was just great to watch.
Yeah. There's a lot of movies where the CGI doesn't hold up the first time you watch it, or like after a year or something like that. Like as soon as almost anything else comes out, you're like, oh, that looks kind of bad now. This movie's 12 years old. I still thought it looked fantastic. Like rubber fish aside, I think it looks really, really solid. I think that says a lot for the visuals and what they were able to pull off with it. The scene you're talking about, not spoilers, warning, I have a tendency to overthink movies, and I get that a lot of people look at me and are like, dude, it's a movie, calm down. Everything that happened after that scene with her, I was not able to enjoy because I'm just like,
her running around.
Yeah, like
her
abdomen's been fully
abs.
cut.
Yeah.
What are you like? My wife had a
4
cesarean.
morphine pens, guys. 4 morphine pens.
That doesn't heal abs.
Walk after 4, let alone the cesarean.
I'm sorry. You're going the opposite way. Okay, yes, I agree with you. Then I thought you were going to be like the morphine is what's keeping her together. It's like, no, if your muscles aren't fucking attached, they're not going to work properly. And like she's running, and then like she pulls herself up at one point. I'm like, off.
Yeah.
There's no way.
You've got no abdomen. You've got no abs at all.
And like it's the future. If they'd use the same laser to cut her open and then heal her again, I'd be like, who knows? Future technology, moving on, time travel, blah 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 blah.
Couldn't a little machine be like reattaching abdomen muscles or some line of They could throw in one line of dialogue to smooth it over a bit.
But they're very like staples. Like so you're actually just hurting the area more right now.
Yeah, let's make it look more brutal.
But like, that bothered me so much. I'm sorry. It's a movie. Moving on.
Or give her, or create some transition of time, a good 24 hours or something, so you could at least, I don't know, she literally
healing laser is my favorite.
She literally climbs out of that pod, gets into a suit, and continues on with the movie. You're
supposed to forget that it happened. You're supposed to like. There's a suit on her. She doesn't really. She cowers over once or twice, but you're not supposed to think about that ever again.
No, I mean, once you see that engineer ripping heads off, like, who cares about the cesarean, right?
Yeah. Great scene. Absolutely amazing scene. I loved it. It's one that's very memorable to me. But afterwards, it's just another one of those things that was such a major plot hole. And it's like, why? Why is this in here?
Yeah, that was like the ode to the chest burster scene of the first movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think they did a really good job of it, for sure. Again, aftermath, not so good, but that's what this movie seems to be. A lot of good setup and not a lot of
good ideas with not good payoff.
Agreed. So,
what was going on with the lab scene? They inject the head with something, and all of a sudden it starts like withering and explodes. Did that make any sense to anybody? And I just missed it.
That was unnecessarily fun. It was fun, and I love the scene, but it was totally pointless and unnecessary. What? Hey, maybe if we stab it, we can electrocute it and bring it back to life. Like, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
Take a DNA sample. Fuck off. This is dumb.
And it was obviously infected with like the black goo of some kind. which then made it or the black goo made it just explode for some unknown reason. But it was gross, so put it in the movie.
Yeah, it was totally unnecessary. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it was very
also
Frankenstein-esque a little bit there, right?
Like, as a scientist, and I'm not one, obviously, but like, you would think if you had a sample of a 2,000-year-old being that you've never seen before, and you don't know if you have any more samples, you're not going to experiment with it at the first try. Like, you're going to have like that thing for years before you're like, you know what?
Oh yeah,
we should try this. And they're
That's
just like, you know what? Fuck it.
Let's see if it's flammable.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Exactly.
That's the
what
other
happens
thing,
when you react with acid?
Again, bad character writing throughout this movie, and Holloway specifically. Holloway's like, I'm gonna drink myself into a stupor because I didn't get to meet an alien. Even though we found alien bodies, we found proof of life. They found the most important discovery ever. Period. Bar none. Yeah. And he's just like, oh, I didn't get to talk to an alien. My life's the worst. I'm just going to drink myself into a stupor.
A huge step towards possibly talking to an alien on down the line. Yeah. And he just gives up.
It's so bad.
Now, I do want to go back to a question I had, and I think the first Alien movie. In this universe, are there other alien species? Like, we know there are. Obviously, there's the engineers and the xenomorphs and stuff like that. But has humanity come in contact with other aliens, or has humanity charted the stars and not really found anybody? Because if this is the first alien contact humanity has ever had, I agree. This is a huge step forward for humanity, and he should be like amazingly proud of what he's discovered. But if this is just like, we already have the Romulans, the Klingons, the blah blah blah. It's like, okay, it's just another alien. They're all dead. It's not the same thing.
I feel, and then this is just me because there's no factual tellings in the Alien franchise up until this point that I've seen. If there was other aliens running amok, we would know about them. They would say something, or they would be like, hey, aliens, we found this other thing that maybe we were created by aliens. Do you know anything about this before we just venture off into the dark void to find out ourselves? Like, it just seems like if there was other intelligent life that they've already found or are already living with amongst or whatever, it would be established in any of the numerous movies we've already watched. And it hasn't been, so I feel like they have not found anything of its significance. Whereas obviously the engineers are a super intelligent race and things like that. Maybe they've found plant life or small organisms, the worms that they see in the ground. Maybe they've found that kind of stuff, but nothing of significance, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So aliens are canon for the Predator franchise, but not vice versa. The Predators are not canon for Alien franchise. In the Colonial Marines novellas, they do encounter sentient life in a variety of ways, but nothing that is intelligent. It's all animal or insect or viral, because the Colonial Marines go on bug hunts, which are they go out and they exterminate animals or creatures on a planet that they need to get rid of. And so I believe that it's canon in the films as well, because they do make the reference to a bug hunt. But that comes from the novels of the Colonial Marines going and exterminating animals on planets for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation.
Okay, fair enough. I did like how this one, it is the Weyland Corporation. Like, it's not Weyland-Yutani yet. Such a small little thing. It was one of those like, oh, okay, cool. That hasn't happened yet. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, once the daughter and Weyland are both nixed, I guess, then somebody buys out the company.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right.
So what did you guys think of the end, how we have an alien xenomorph that is not the traditional xenomorph, the weird looking xenomorph that offended so many of the viewers that enjoyed the franchise? Not me, by the way.
I was going to say, like, you're the biggest fan, so
I knew what I was getting into with this movie, and I knew this wasn't going to be direct with
typical,
it.
Yeah.
Didn't bother me at all. there was maybe like a split second where I was like, oh, that looks different. And it's like, oh, right, it came from a different source. Cool. And moved on with my life.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, could it have happened earlier to get more answers? Maybe, but I didn't mind where they had it. It also leaves it more of a cliffhanger for a sequel, which obviously we know is there. So it sets that up. But yeah, I didn't mind that at all. I didn't even question it looking different. I knew from the previous movies, like, they're going to look different depending on the organism that they
inhabit,
procreate with. Yeah, whatever you want to say. But yeah, I had more issue with the first face hugger that she birthed, and how much it grew in a few hours compared to like what the face huggers we know and love. This one was like so vastly different, coming from such a small specimen. It just seemed odd in that way. But that brings me to a bigger issue of the black goo in general and what it is and how it works. And that is a huge question mark of theories that may never be answered. We can get into that if you want, but yeah, the xenomorph that we do see, no issue with that whatsoever.
Yeah. So I love the fact that Shaw, a female, gives birth to something that conquers the engineer. I like that paradigm, that everyone is trying to find out who created who and get answers from everything. And there's this daughter-father relationship. There's the son-father relationship with the android. And there's all these things like about these daddy issues with Wayland. And Wayland himself wants to talk to this big male masculine engineer. And lo and behold, Shaw, who initially couldn't even give birth, comes in contact with the black goo and is able to produce something so powerful it overcomes the engineers which were supposed to have started it all. And I thought that was really just kind of a cool paradigm of how that all played out.
Yeah, I mean,
I hadn't thought of that.
It's a central theme throughout the movie, right? Like, the engineers give life, creating Earth, humans, and then humans create life in the androids, and it's always this like trying to become better than, or at least equal to, your creator. And so it makes sense that people who now engineers see as a failed experiment or a potential threat to their own existence, that it plays true that the people who they are so afraid of surpass them by exactly that scene, her birthing this creature that can dominate their creator, right? But yeah. That's like one of the major things, and then it goes down so many rabbit holes of like creation and sacrifice, and why do the engineers see people or human race as a failed experiment? Why are they going to terminate them 2,000 years ago, and before they get eradicated themselves? And that's still kind of up in the air of how it happens. But yeah, there's like so many weird things, and it brought so many questions. And like with them, the engineers visiting people throughout time, checking in on them so that they have their little drawings that they find throughout history, guiding them to this star or this moon or whatever. And they see it as an invitation, whether that is truth or not. What it is actually representing is unknown, but they take it as an invite to be like, hey, come hang with us, bro. We're totally cool with you coming over here. It's like, so I don't know. I have so many thoughts, and I just don't know even where to start.
So here, I'm going to take that ball and run with it for a second, if you don't mind. I have not seen deleted scenes. I don't know any of that stuff, so you might correct me pretty fast on this one. But what the movie presents, you kind of have to go with, or at least that's what I'm going with here.
Yes.
And at one point, Idris Elba says, I forget his character name, this isn't their home world. This is their weapons factory. You wouldn't put a weapons factory right next to like the capital city or something in case something goes wrong. So assuming this is a weapons factory, and I'm going to take two different sets of thoughts here. One, if the engineers are so smart, they can create human life and all life on Earth, and they can create the xenomorphs. Maybe it's just a variation of them, and that's why the face huggers don't look the same. Like they're more eel-like. They don't have the legs to crawl around on. Maybe that's why it develops differently in her stomach, or turns into a larger being in her stomach. Like maybe that particular factory was made to take on humans and the ones that we get in the other planet, because it's not the same ship that we see at the beginning of Alien. Maybe
Correct.
that was designed for, Mars or whatever the heck, like to wipe out a different race. I have no idea. I'm just throwing that out there. Secondly, they do have the star map, the invitation as they call it. Why on earth, and I'm rhetorical, I'm not necessarily looking for an answer, why on earth would the engineers come all the way to Earth, go to all the different places on Earth, show them this exact star location if it was a weapons factory used to kill them? Like they're wanting to wipe humanity out, but they're waiting for us to get advanced enough to come to them to do it? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
David says 2,000 years ago they were going to fly a ship there to eradicate Earth.
So then what's the point of pointing out the stars?
The breakout happens, and then the breakout happens and they all die before they can do it, right? So what's the point of the star map?
What's the point of the star maps?
Good question.
The star map doesn't make any sense. You're right.
Exactly.
It leads them to the wrong place. It doesn't lead them to the home world. It's definitely not an invitation. And you're not going to show them, hey, this is the big gun we have pointed at you. In case you're a failed experiment, we're going to kill you with it. You wouldn't show them that. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense that that's where the map leads them to. It should lead them to the home world. So another gaping plot hole that if you stop and think about it, it doesn't work.
Maybe that is the point. Now that you say it like that, maybe that is the
get your shit right or we're going to kill you all?
Kind of. Like okay, so think about it. You want to bring up religion. Here we go. Yep. Think about it in the sense of like all the people in the pictures are worshiping the big tall person. The big tall person is pointing at the stars. That is your destruction. Do what we say or we're going to kill you. This is your hell. Good luck. Worship me or hell. Right. Okay. I mean, I didn't think that's just it probably doesn't work perfectly, but it's one of those like, oh, okay, maybe.
They're going to explain Vickers' relationship to her father that well, but they're going to leave it up in the air about this whole religious philosophy of why and where the military encampment or the home world, all that stuff. Come on, again, that's bad scripting, right?
Oh, I agree entirely. Yeah. It's one of those fun things that when you're watching it the first time, you're just like, that's cool, and then you go back to like, because I was like days later, I've been really fighting with what I think of this movie. Days later, I was thinking about this, and I'm just like, wait a second. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay, so I will say something that you're going to learn more about, but you guys didn't seem to catch it in this first movie. The goo reacts differently as it encounters different creatures. The snake that went through the guy's face mask and in his suit and everything and killed him in a very gruesome, fun way, that was a worm that was in the dirt before the goo started leaking out, and the goo attached itself. Also, you see in the very beginning when he drinks the sauce and he falls into the water, it breaks him down and recombines his DNA in a completely new way. So it reacts in different ways to different things. And we see in the previous movies, a face hugger implants a human and it bursts out of your chest and you get the full xenomorph that we know. And we've seen it react differently when it was an ox or a dog, depending on which version you saw, right? You got a different form of it taking place as it happens. So we had Holloway who was infected by it and literally impregnating his wife via the traditional means with it, and it grows in her womb, not in her esophagus or anything. Like it grows in her womb and becomes that other thing that's not a face hugger, but more of a squid. I think there's like a weird name for it that they've got a real name for this thing.
Sure.
That ends up impregnating a engineer via the face hugging method. So now you get something that resembles a xenomorph, but in a very different path. So we're seeing the goo interact with different things in different ways and getting different results.
Okay, so I like all of that, and I recognized all of that. Here's my question. Run, you mentioned this. Did the engineers create the goo? Did the engineers create xenomorphs?
The engineers did not create xenomorphs. I can't talk about it more because we're going to learn more about it.
Okay.
But answer me this. When they go into the holy room with the big head, there's a mural up on the ceiling. And when they go in there, it changes to a mural of a xenomorph in a cross-like position.
Yeah. So
Right.
xenomorphs are definitely in the art.
They know about xenomorphs.
Right.
They didn't create them.
They didn't
worship them.
Oh. So
see you next week for Covenant.
Actually, we'll talk about this in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
But you can see the muralistic stuff behind me. This is some art by Geiger. Actually, it's AI rendered art of what Geiger would make. And you're gonna you see that in this movie, and you're gonna see more of it, and you're gonna see more of it, and you're gonna see more of it. I don't know why they put the mural of a xenomorph style head on that thing. It's there. It doesn't really fit in. We'll learn more and we'll talk more about it. But
the mural also shows face hugger like creatures onto humanoid figure like creatures.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I didn't see that one.
It's in the bottom corners on either side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's very quick because he flashlights past it. And so I'm like, what is all this?
Oh, I missed
because
that.
This seems important. Not only that, the first mural is like an engineer with a different creature that it looks like he is I don't know if he's birthing it or holding it down in submission. It was a very interesting mural as well. So both of these murals make me feel like, did they know about xenomorphs or what this goo has to offer to do that? But more importantly, they never really answer if they create the goo or if they have manufactured it based off of something. But obviously it connects to xenomorphs in some way. We know that. And so it's a matter of, we know it's bio. It's not a technological thing because David says it's a bio thing when he's touching it like a weirdo. And it also, I felt, looked different from the beginning of the movie in the cup. That goo looked slightly different than the goo we see in these vases later in the movie.
I like to think of it like this. I think that the goo is a form of technology or a style of technology, like we use microchips, but we use microchips to do a huge variety of things, right? There's branches of technology. I think the goo is a branch of technology. And just like we can use nuclear energy to power our homes, we can also use it to destroy our homes. That's how I like to think of the goo. And I think you're right. I think that cup in the beginning is a little bit different. They can use that to seed life on a planet, but they can also use that same technology to wipe out all life on a planet.
I agree. I think they can alter it. But unlike you, I don't feel like technology is a weird way to say it because it's a biology. I feel like engineers are we use biology. We sacrifice our bodies to give life, and we sacrifice or we destroy life using biological weapons. Whereas humans are very much, we use technology, machines to further our lives. And they're very different. And maybe that's why the engineers butted heads with humans at some point.
I think they could be two different branches of technology, one being a physical, mechanical style, one being a biological style. And you're right, that could be what pisses them off. There's lots of science fiction out there where humans evolve a new form of technology where we grow habitats in space out of biological materials and things like that. Interesting stuff. So it can go either way.
Even their spaceship, now that you're saying that, like the interior of their spaceship doesn't feel metallic. It feels
more organic.
Organic. Thank you so much.
Or so biomechanic.
Like I would have loved.
And Geiger's known for the biomechanics, right? Like even their space suits that now we know, we thought, oh, those were the aliens from the Alien movie. It's like, that's the alien. But no, like the space jockey is what they called it then. But then Ridley Scott made it say, oh, no, that's like their biomechanic helmet and armor and spacesuit, right? So it's very interesting that way.
I'm not laughing at you, Will. I
saw.
I'm putting it up so everyone can see it on YouTube.
Too good.
Well done, Dumpster. Well done. You broke them.
You know what, guys? As to do the engineers know what a xenomorph is or where they come from or anything? I don't have a clear answer for that, but I would love to come back to this topic after we finish the franchise.
Yeah.
Because future movies go into these topics.
For sure. But from this movie alone, having that mural kind of dictates that they have some understanding of it.
Because and I think
they see that, right?
So you're right, and I can't talk about it because I know more. Because I've seen more, and so I don't want to give my answer because it's going to lead you guys down a path, and I want to find you. I want to see if you guys find it yourself.
Now I know
you asked a very interesting question that I know is not going to be part of this movie, and now I'm mildly sad that it's not, because they wanted to wipe out humanity 2,000 years ago. And 2,000 years ago, we didn't really have any good technology. But I kind of love the idea that they created us thinking they could control us, but all of their technology is bio, all of ours is tech. And the bio doesn't integrate well with the tech very well. Like, they can kind of see down the road, like, oh shit, we're going to lose this war.
The goo doesn't affect David.
Yeah, David touches the goo, doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my point.
Exactly. The mechanical aspects of our technology are outpacing theirs and have a defense against
theirs. But not 2,000
theirs.
years ago.
Right.
So that's my issue with it. I was like, oh, that's not going to work out quite well, but that would have been cool if it wasn't, oh, you guys are a failed experiment, and it wasn't, oh, you guys are a locust. It's like, no, you guys are going to fuck us up, and we need to take care of you before that happens. That I would have accepted. That would have been a cool conversation between David and the engineer. If we had to have one between them, which I still wish we didn't, I would have accepted that.
Now, I'm going to jump in on you here because you're talking about the 2,000 years ago. This movie is based around Christmas 2,000 years ago. What's that about? What's Christmas 2,000 years ago?
The birth of Jesus Christ.
Right. And Shaw had an immaculate birthing of her own.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary had their own. And
you hear that? Will thinks Jesus is an alien.
It's a theory out there. They visit Earth every so often, checking in. Everybody kind of worships and takes to them. And then 2,000 years ago from the movie, they're like, oh, we have to get rid of these people. There's no more murals. There's no more indication. Did they send somebody down and it didn't go so well? Did the Romans maybe kill somebody who was supposed to be prophesizing and telling them the good word? Is Jesus a space alien?
I mean, our imagery of Jesus Christ has him with a lot more fair skin than what he actually should have had. Maybe
Jesus is a pretty white boy.
Maybe the engineer just grew some lovely locks and we killed him. I don't know. And maybe that's what started it. They're like, "Oh, you killed my son!"
Oh, good Lord.
Or perhaps, I mean, it doesn't have to be that extreme. And that's why I said, do we want to go into the religion?
I didn't think you were going to Jesus. I think you were going to talk about like creators and such.
Fantastic. Let's keep going.
Also, though, Jesus sacrificed himself for the greater good of humanity, just like the
first guy. Very religious tones in that opening scene, too.
Oh, for sure. Give life. Yeah. Like, there is all of these religious tones throughout the movie. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention them. Do I think Jesus was a space alien? Probably not. Do I feel they sent somebody?
Probably.
Leave a window of opening there.
Sure. I mean,
just in case.
Do I believe any religion? Probably not. It doesn't matter, right? That's not the point.
Welcome to the last episode of our rating, guys.
Join us next week as we retitle the show "3 Atheists."
Yeah. Hey, I specifically I specifically asked beforehand if y'all wanted to get into religion, and I heard don't matter to me. So here we are.
I didn't know the direction you were going to go, but I'm here for it.
We're talking about what the writers of the film, the director of the film, wanted to portray in a movie. We're not going after anybody, and I hold the belief that I could be wrong about everything. So I'm happy to entertain any ideas for the fun of it, and I'm not putting anybody down. I hope everybody who's watching understands that. Sure.
And in no way do I feel this movie is like this is
not a proclamation of what someone believes is truth, but it's honest, interesting.
There has been other religions formed, aka Scientology, based on aliens being our gods, our creators. So it's not super far-fetched that this movie is discussing that, and it is doing exactly that in obviously a very different way than Scientology, thankfully. But do I think that a space engineer Jesus came down? No, but maybe intertwined in that story somewhere, they saw that the Romans are like, fuck this, we're selfish ass motherfuckers. We're gonna do whatever the hell we want. We're not gonna care about anybody's religion. We're just gonna kill everything and dominate the world. And that is why the engineers are like, oh hell no. We fucked up. This experiment's gone south. Let's exterminate. But they never got to the extermination.
If I'm being honest, this is a fun path to go down, and I enjoy the conversation. But I pray to God none of this is even remotely in Alien Covenant or Romulus.
Do you want me to go into further detail? Because
kind of, yeah, actually I do, but I also just don't want any of this to be accurate.
Absolutely. I want to hear where this goes. In
an interview with the now defunct movies.com, Ridley Scott, the director of Alien, Prometheus, and Alien Covenant, explains, if you look at it as our children are misbehaving down there scenario, there are moments where it looks like we've gone out of control, running around with our armor and skirts, which of course would be the Roman Empire. And they were given a long run. 1,000 years before their disintegration actually started to happen. And you can say, let's send down one of our emissaries to see if he can stop it. Guess what? They crucified him.
I think that's very interesting. I mean, if we can draw religious parallels to the Matrix, then we're allowed to draw religious parallels to this. And I think it's fun to do so.
The Matrix had it like blatantly in it. Like somebody straight up calls him, "You're my own personal savior, you're my savior, my own personal Jesus Christ." Like they're not hiding it at all. Like that imagery is in that movie. And while I agree it's in this one, it is way more subtle. Like nothing you just said is in this film.
Correct.
Like nothing about like, oh, the Romans or, you know, crucifying our son. All of that is nonsense. Oh, sorry, not nonsense. All of that is the director's vision that didn't make it to the screen. The Matrix, it's in the movie.
So I believe that it was possible religious undertones in that the engineer society had a peaceful, somewhat I don't know, like maybe more like a Buddhist type religion than a stronger deity. But they had a way of life, and they saw where humanity was going, and they were less than impressed with it. But I think more than anything, I think that it was the same way with the engineer's view of humanity that it was with Wayland's view of his creation. It doesn't interest me that much. Let's start over. Let's not give it the respect it deserves by being a thinking being, whether it has a soul or not. It's not a thinking being, and they don't respect it. They felt like they made this thing with their technology, whether it be biotech or mechanical tech, right? They made it with their technology, and they don't believe that we really had a soul. They probably felt we were their creation to simply wipe out and try again. And I think that's where they were. But in so doing, could it be that there was a sect or group of engineers that thought, hey, these humans are worth keeping around? Maybe we shouldn't be wiping them out. Maybe they had an act of domestic terrorism on one of their facilities where they released this weapon of mass destruction on their own society because people in their society felt that they should not be wiping out their creations.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, and that's why this movie is like cool. There's so many questions, so many theories you can come and glean from this movie because they leave it so open.
Mm-hmm.
They don't answer a lot. They ask a lot.
That's right.
And that's good and bad because
I like it because it gives guys like us something to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
This conversation did not go the way I thought it was going to. I was thinking about that a second ago. Like, I made a thumbnail for this ahead of time, and it's like, where are the aliens? And now I'm going to have to, like, scratch that and be like, is this Jesus? Like, it's going to be a totally different thumbnail. It's like, oh, did not see that coming.
Yeah. Well, to the lay person who enjoyed the Alien franchise, when this movie came out, it didn't have the traditional xenomorph, and everybody lost their mind, and that was a huge issue when it was the big headline for the movie kind of thing when it came out. And all this amazing ideas that we're talking about and these great philosophical questions that this movie raises about creationism, about motherhood and fatherhood and family structures and where you originate and what is a soul and all this great stuff got swept under the rug because everybody was like, well, it didn't have a xenomorph. And that kind of sucks because I thought this was a great movie had they not tied it to the Alien franchise. I think it could have been so much more. And they had really bad plot holes in that one dialogue line, of course, a father that really just was a showstopper when she dropped that line.
Yeah,
I would have been perfectly okay if there was literally no alien in it. Like, I didn't hate the alien at the end of the movie, but it wasn't necessary by any stretch of the imagination. You know where that's going. Like, once he gets that thing on his face, you're kind of like, okay, I see what's happening now. And
would this movie be better if it wasn't an alien movie?
I'm okay with it being in the Alien universe, but I'm thinking I like the fact that it's not called Alien Prometheus.
Right.
Like the fact that it's just called Prometheus. I feel like I knew that it was an alien movie by the time I rented it. But if I'd gone and seen this in theaters and like halfway through, because I don't even think, honestly, at the time, I don't even think the fact that the guy's name is Wayland would have clued me in. It would have been later than that, where I'd be like, wait a sec. And it would have been like this cool revelation, like, oh, like me connecting dots in theater. That would have been phenomenal. I don't need this to be an alien movie, but I like that it's connected and that it works with it. Probably the alien ship would have been the first time where you're like, oh shit. Assuming you take the alien off the mural in the background, probably seeing the U-shaped ship to be the first time you're like, I've seen that before.
Ilazy in YouTube chat mentions, and their ship looks nothing like each other's, talking about the first ship in the very beginning of the movie and the ship at the very end. That is because the ship at the end is a warship meant to deliver those bombs and destroy a planet. The ship in the beginning is a emissary style ship where it is delivering their chosen one who is going to sacrifice themselves in a somewhat religious ceremony to spread life to a planet. And that's why you have the two different ships. And in the original Alien movie, we have the warship that doesn't have the... Now, keep in mind, those pods, those bombs, those vases or whatever, they look very similar to an alien egg. Correct. But they're not. They're obviously not. But there's that tie in the first movie
where the ship has it, and they're eggs.
So
and it's
eggs.
not that many years later.
Well, there's the other thing. If the ship at the very beginning versus the ship at the very end, there's also 33,000 years between those two things. Like, you change technology over time. Like, it wouldn't necessarily look the same regardless.
I think it was totally different sentiment though. The president flies in on Air Force One, but you use a B-52 bomber to end somebody. It's two different things that take place there. So you're not sending the same ship. And I think that's a distinction that needs to be made. I don't know if it was two factions. That's another thing.
Also, this another theory. Yeah.
It's open to interpretation. You get to go into it and you get to take what you want from it and have all these great ideas. Mm-hmm. I really would love to circle back around and cover some of these ideas after we finish the franchise.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Run 7. Is this movie better if it is not related to the Alien universe?
I think it could be. I think it actually could be.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets
Dan avoided my question.
Same movie though.
Dan avoided my question completely, but
it doesn't make the money that this one makes if they don't give it the Alien tie-in.
It's not the exact same movie, Dan. It has to change. Obviously, you take out you change the engineer look, right? Like, you have to change the look because that's an alien.
But then how much do you change it to make it what you want it to be? Because if you can change certain elements of this movie absolutely gets better.
It's scientists going out to find the aliens that created us based on their findings of the cave drawings over centuries.
Sure.
And then they find this creator-like alien species who use this goo to create. It's all the same. It just doesn't have aliens in it. The alien tag at the end, right? Like, it doesn't have that.
Okay, but again, like, if this movie went to credits before that scene, which it kind of did, I'm saying you could remove that scene and I'd be just as happy with it. I don't think that makes the movie better or worse, regardless, having that the xenomorph at the very end.
Okay.
If everything else about the movie stays exactly the same, I don't think the xenomorph changes the movie's positive or negative by any point value.
I feel like it changes the way you think of the movie, because when you watch this movie knowing it's about aliens or finding out it's about alien, then you automatically try to draw the straws of like, okay, where did that ship on L422 come into play? And at what time did these vases turn into alien pods? And at what time do xenomorphs come into the picture? Like, these are all things that you have to think about when you're watching this movie or after you watch it. Whereas if it's not, you're just thinking about, oh, this is just a movie about where do we come from? Who we want to meet our makers. Are they gods? Are they another species?
Sure.
What is it? So there are differences. It's just a matter of if you think they're the same,
Okay.
it's the same. But that
My disappointments with this movie were not connected to it being connected to Alien.
Okay.
My disappointments to this movie were it got philosophical and had a really interesting beginning, and then didn't pay any of those off properly in a way that I was satisfied with.
Right.
There was a moment when I was watching this where I was kind of like, this doesn't really work, because I thought the ship that they were on, for some reason, I thought that was the ship at the beginning of Alien. So when the engineer gets off, like, because the engineer even sits in that, like, it looks like a gun, but it's how they steer the ship. I was like, oh shit, he's already infected because the chest burster is going to come out. And then he gets up and runs away. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what? It just didn't click with me. And then I realized, like, oh, no, this is a totally different ship. This is like, it's the same ship because it's the same race. Other than that, totally different thing. Who cares? I let that go pretty fast. But I don't know, man. I don't think,
because a lot of the hate of this movie came from the lack of answers or connection to the Alien franchise, which it absolutely is. So if it was a standalone of its own making, it may have been better received by a lot of people. But I just wanted to know your attitude. And you, I think, because you're like a sci-fi guy and you just like, again, the philosophical of it, you bought more into that than if there was weird loose strings connecting the movies or what have you, right?
I don't like that it didn't answer the questions it asked, not that it didn't connect to the other movies. That's what was disappointing for me, because even if it, like, I don't take The Matrix as fact, but at least it kind of answers the questions that it poses, and you can leave it with oh, that's interesting. Whereas this is kind of like, hey, what if, oh, by the way, aliens kill everybody? And you're like, well, those are two very different things.
I believe this was meant to be a trilogy from the get.
It was.
So does this make you feel like kind of Into the Spider-Verse 2, where they just like, oh, this is obviously setting up for a sequel where we'll get more answers?
If instead of getting the alien coming out of these engineer scene, it had just said to be continued.
Oh, okay, fair. Yeah.
I would probably be a lot more excited for what turned out to be Covenant. I knew Covenant was obviously the next movie in the franchise. I didn't realize it was a sequel to this movie. I thought it was just like the next one. You know what I mean? Like how the Predator movies, like Predator 2 is not a sequel to Predator. It's just the next Predator story.
Right.
Now that I know that Covenant is the sequel to this, and I spoiled it with myself a little bit. I'm pretty sure David is in the next one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm way more excited for Covenant than I was when it first came out, or even 2 weeks ago. So, I'm sure it's going to be bad. But I'm just saying, like, I'm curious about it now, and to see where it goes with this storyline.
Right.
I'll say this. Because of the uproar of there not being a true xenomorph, the traditional xenomorph in Prometheus, they did change up Covenant to make sure that there was much more xenomorphs in it.
It was more alien-like movie.
I'm pretty sure Alien is in the title for one, and the box art is a giant alien. So like they're not hiding it at all in that one. Whereas this one was like,
unfortunately, there's just not a lot I can jump in on this question because I have answers for some of this.
Oh, for sure.
Sure.
And
you did answer my question, which was like, do you think it would been beneficial to be a standalone, not an Alien universe movie?
Right. Yeah. And I think Ridley Scott wanted to make a standalone movie.
Agreed.
A science fiction movie about these big philosophical questions. And I think it would have been just fine without it. However, I think this movie, as we will see in the future, pivots this franchise in a tremendous way. We saw hints of it in 3. This movie gave it the ability to go in a whole new direction. And And when we get to the end of this franchise, we'll have some words on the significance of this movie.
Well, should we lead this right into our ratings then?
I think we should. I don't have any more I can really talk about. I'm bursting at the seams.
For sure, but like just you saying that feels like you're leading to a rating on this specific movie.
Let me go ahead and tally up my score, because I did make some adjustments as we went, nice. Of course.
Okay. Let me know if it's good or bad after, but I can go first.
Dan, would you like me to tally these up and type them and send it to you, or do you want the I want to give you the reaction live.
Yeah, I can do the reaction live, but Will, why don't you go first? Because I think Brian and I both have to kind of like work on our score and figure that out.
Yeah, I think for me, like I kind of come out blunt on the beginning here. I feel like this movie did a lot of great things, and I feel like this movie did a lot of not great things. This movie is beautiful. I think it holds up over time. It's a beautiful science fiction movie. It looks great. I think Ridley Scott is great at world building. Blade Runner, Alien, this and probably future movies. He does great at making a world look real, feel real. I feel like he wanted to make a movie that wasn't a part of the Alien franchise, but he had to wedge it in there. And I think that kind of took away from this movie's concepts, the questions it asks. I feel like this is a true sci-fi movie asking philosophical questions about humankind and where we came from and what our purpose is. And I feel like maybe the convolution of two different writers made it hard to answer any of those questions, as well as shoehorning in some alien lore at the end. So actors were all great. Characters, on the other hand, were dismal for the most part. There was like 3 good character develops in this movie, and the rest they're scientists being funded, the biggest funding ever, to go on this maiden voyage to potentially our creators, funded by the man who wants to extend his life. He's on board. He wants nothing to go wrong, and he brings on a geologist who immediately gets lost in a very straightforward ship to get around in, and a biologist who is playing with an unknown life form, terrified by a dead body just minutes ago, and a woman who runs in a straight line because you can only run in a straight line when something is rolling towards you. A donut is rolling towards you. There's just copious amounts of bad character writing, which really made me hate a lot of the plot points in this movie because of it. And I think that is where the biggest follies of this movie and the biggest scores against this movie come into play. Is in the scriptural process. The big questions, I'm okay with them not being answered. We had a great talk about them, bringing up weird theories and what could be and what could happen next. And I think that is great. And I think that's where sci-fi lives and should live. I just feel like it just is 2 different movies fighting to be one and ultimately not doing a great job. But because we're talking about it, 12 years later, because David is such an incredible character and acted so well by David Fassbender, this movie's got legs, and I think will continue to be talked about for a long time. And maybe that's because it's part of the Alien franchise. So overall, Prometheus out of 100 scores 68. The genre, I think it hits. The acting is okay. The writing is dismal. The direction is good. Visually, not so good storytelling wise, but I do think it holds up because it does give us these big questions that people have asked for forever. Where do we come from? Why are we here? How do we find who made us, and why did they make us, and who made them, and where does it originate? And that will forever be a universal thing that humankind wants to know. And so people will continue to talk about this movie, I feel. So 68 out of 100 overall.
Nice. That only changes your score for the Alien franchise by 1. So it takes you down to 74, which is still pretty good.
Yeah, that's legit.
Considering I hope we've been through the worst of the franchise. Now it should be
I don't know about that.
Steady, if not better. We'll see. You think Covenant could potentially be worse than 3 or Resurrection?
I think Covenant will be worse than this movie.
Oh, that's fair. Okay, fair enough.
No, neither of you have seen Covenant or Romulus.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Man, Will said a lot of good things. So I started off. Oh, the one and only compliment you get this episode. I said at the very beginning, I didn't have a final score for this. I usually rate movies in 5 categories when we started doing this show. I have music, cinematography, and these are broad categories. Music, cinematography, acting, plot, and enjoyment. The enjoyment is just how much I actually enjoyed the movie, because sometimes you can really love a bad movie. My rating system is failing me in this movie because, unfortunately, all of the pieces or all the ingredients are amazing, but the pie is just not. And I'm struggling with what to make of that, because if I go into my categories, the music in this movie is phenomenal. The sound design is phenomenal. The cinematography, this movie looks incredible. We had like the minorest of gripes. The alien looks fake and rubbery, or the makeup is a little off on the old man. Those aren't big complaints that take me out of the movie at all. They're nitpicky at best. You know what I mean? If you're looking at something that looks this good and you feel like, oh, I have to complain about something, I guess you can pick on those things. But realistically, they didn't take me out of the movie until I was looking for something to take me out of the movie. The acting in this, you're right. The characters are a little weird, and a lot of them are super negative, and I didn't appreciate that. But I thought a lot of people did good job in the acting on this one. Specifically, Michael Fassbender, I thought was absolutely stellar in this. And I love that he's going to be in the next one, because I want to see more of his portrayal of David. I thought he did an incredible job, just like malice hiding behind like every scene that he's in. Like, he's just so angry at these people who are wasting their humanity, and just, I don't know. I thought he just did an incredible job. The plot is probably the weakest thing for me. And even then, I can't hate on it, because the entirety of the plot asks so many interesting questions that we just talked about for 2 hours. And I had a great time discussing it all that we wouldn't have had without this movie. None of these questions are brought up in Aliens or Alien Resurrection. You have to get to this one, and you have to have this storyline to get to these questions that you're going to be asking. And as much as they don't pay off, Will makes a good point. Like, you don't necessarily want it to pay off. You don't necessarily need the answers. Asking the question is sometimes good enough. Oh, I'm struggling with this. As far as my entertainment, like, again, up until probably at the halfway point, this was my favorite Alien movie, period. And it wasn't particularly close. It does get worse the further into the movie you get, unfortunately, for me at least. So that's tough. So if I'm looking at these categories, a lot of these are incredibly high, and they leave me with a final score that I apparently didn't write down. Super. I think it was like 84 or something, which puts it right in line with Alien 1 and 2, which doesn't feel right. As much as this movie gets right, the final product isn't as good as Alien 1 or 2 for me. So I kind of have to break away from my own writing system, but I can't like say, oh, this is a 50 because it sucked. I'm going to ding it a little bit, but it's still pretty high for me. I'm going to give this a 75. I think that feels right, even though it's breaking my own system to get here. Hey guys, Future Dan here. I just wanted to throw this out there. This has never happened before, so this is a little bit of unprecedented, but just on the off chance this is the only episode you've ever seen of our rating or ever are going to see, I just wanted to let you know, next week when we watch Alien Covenant, I discussed the fact that after watching Covenant, I rewatched Prometheus, and I did decide to go back and give it the 84 score that it truly did deserve in my eyes. So the scoring is going to be a little bit off on this one, but just, you know, I did end up giving it the 84, not the 75. I feel like that is actually what this movie deserves. If you want to hear more about it, check back next week when we have Alien Covenant. We'll go over it more there. Okay, sure. Back to the video.
Okay, so here's the thing, guys. Your guys' scores are spot on because you haven't seen the rest of the franchise. This movie has flaws, and it brings it down, and it makes it hard to get through. Little inconsistencies, stupid plot mechanics, just dumb choices in the way that they wrote this and where they should go that made it, you kind of like shake your head and go, why? But if you get rid of those and you start looking at the bigger picture, What a phenomenal idea. What an absolutely extraordinary film that gets you thinking in so many crazy ways. Everything from space Jesus to is a female birth better than a man giving birth to a robot? Like, just the weirdest stuff that comes out of this movie that no other film has ever done before. And that's why the original score that I give this, had I not finished the franchise, is going to come out at a 78. But knowing the revolutionary pivot that this film is going to cast onto the franchise that is Aliens, what this movie is going to do, and just the slightest glimpse into the future, this movie comes in, or will come in after we circle back around it, and this is the score that I want Dan to give it, at a solid 81. Because this movie, much like Aliens, revolutionized Alien and changed it into something so much vast and bigger than it really was. Prometheus does it again, but we don't know that yet, because this was written to be a trilogy of David. And we don't know the whole story of David yet. At least you guys don't. Well, I don't either, because it's a trilogy and we only actually have Prometheus and Covenant. Romulus is not the story of David. They did greenlight it to give. It could be that we get the final chapter of David in the trilogy, and oh my goodness, I hope we do. But I think this movie is absolutely amazingly impactful on the Aliens franchise. It's so very important because it changes everything from here on out, and we just don't know how yet. And so for that, it's going to eventually get an 81.
So 81 is your final score.
81 is going to be my final score. That way we don't have to go back and change it. And 81 is what I have to give it because I know it. And that's what I rewatched it again and again. And I keep trying to fight myself and blank out what I know. And I'm I can't. Because though I don't get answers to the questions of this movie is the foundation of something so much more.
I'm not going to lie. I thoroughly thought you guys were going to be, before the conversation we had today, significantly harsher on this movie. And I was like, I'm pretty happy with my 75. Don't get me wrong. But like, when I was doing the math and I'm like, this feels higher than it should be. I thought you guys were going to be significantly lower and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, because here's the thing. I don't want to be a contrarian, right? I want to be honest with my things. But I feel like when I give something like Gremlins a really low score, that's because I'm being honest with myself, but I'm worried that the audience is like, oh my God, here comes Dan being, this. So when I give
the audience, Dan, give them your score. Stand up for yourself.
That's my point. But I had to fight myself a little bit. Like with Prey, I gave Prey almost a perfect score. And it's like, I don't know. I can totally see you guys saying like it's not a perfect movie. And I don't want to be like, oh, Dan's just, going the opposite direction of the other two. So that's what I was nervous with this one, is that I'd be like, I really liked a lot of this movie. And you guys be like, this is shit. Like, I thought, Brian, for you a little bit, because you're such a big Alien fan, I could have seen you being one of those people like, there's not enough aliens in this, damn it.
Originally I was. And I didn't like how they left this untrue version of the xenomorph to carry on the morphology of the aliens. And I'm like, how do we get the xenomorph that I know and love from that abomination? And it did bother me a whole lot. I was one of those people who did get bothered by that connection. And I left the theater feeling that way. That aside, and stopping there, that's why I say like 74. But that aside, the scope of this film, the theological questions that come to mind, the fact that this is science fiction in its purest form, it's an incredible piece of work. The acting was amazing. You're right, Will. The character design lacking.
Pretty lackluster. Yeah,
lacking, right?
Yeah.
Not horrible, but not as grandiose as the rest of this film. But the acting was amazing, and Fassbender just really stealing the show for me, doing such a great job. Shaw's character was amazing as well, just really good. So, yeah, 81 is what we will come back around to.
Anyways, this is our rating board at the moment. Aliens is still holding on in the second place position, and I feel like, again, I haven't seen Covenant, I haven't seen Romulus, but the fact that we made it through 3 and 4 and it's still in this position, I have to assume it's going to stay where it is or possibly even go up. I've heard amazing things about Romulus. What do you guys think? Does this feel okay to you? You wish it was a little bit higher? I know Run hates that Home Alone's at the top of the list, but you know, it is what it is.
Home Alone deserves an asterisk. We have not finished that franchise. That's
as done as we're going to be.
If you put an asterisk next to Home Alone, I'll shut up about it. But we have only seen the Macaulay Culkins, okay?
That's
Those
true.
are the
I
ones
mean,
that exist.
he's not wrong. If we watch the full encompassing of Home Alone, it's going to just tank that.
That's fair.
Aliens,
we truncated the 5th film of Highlander because we already knew it was resting at the bottom. We didn't need to see another one to change that score. But Home Alone, I need an asterisk by that.
I mean, did all of the Home Alones go to theater? Or
so that would be my next thing is I feel like because we didn't do the Highlander ones, like I feel like we don't want to do the TV movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Netflix, maybe, but like straight to DVD and stuff like that, I feel like we just ignore on this show. Those don't count. So if you look at the Home Alones, I feel like that adds 3 and the Netflix one, but there's a couple in the middle there that are just like, we don't talk about those at all.
I think we should watch.
I'm fine with that.
I think we should watch 3 and Home Sweet Home Alone because Home Sweet Home Alone is actually pretty decent.
Fair.
I would be okay with throwing an asterisk on there that we may never ever revisit. I'd be okay with that.
You know what?
Right.
Just make a teeny tiny picture of my face looking very disgusted and use that as the asterisk.
Now, to answer your question, Dan, I feel like because there's so many Alien movies, our score overall is not going to change much from where it is. It might go up a couple notches, it might go down, but it's not going to supersede the Home Alone asterisks by any means. And I don't think it's going to dip below our 3rd place either. I think it's going to be solid 2nd at this point.
I just pray it doesn't hit 70 by the end. We have a 3-way tie for 2nd. I'm just
going
to
hey,
I will be a contrarian at that point. I'll give it 100% or 0%, whatever I have to do to make it 69 or 71. All right, that's our rating of Prometheus. If you're still here, this is our biggest episode in an hour and a half. Please, you probably enjoyed it. Hit the like button. It really does help. Hit subscribe so you can see more of these content, more great videos going forward, and leave a comment of some kind, even if you have nothing to say, just your favorite emoji. It really does help out with the channel's growth. Or if you do want to tell us how, wrong we were on these scorings or what franchise we should do next, you can leave all that down below as well. But until next time, I hope you're safe, I hope you're well, and have a good night.